breakthrough in a homicide more than 40 years ago. Metro Police say new DNA technology helped them find the guy who killed 25-year-old Sandra DiFelice back in 1980. The brutal killing left her 3-year-old daughter without a mother.
I am so happy that she finally got justice. I feel like I can go on with my life now.
In 1980, two unrelated women, Sandra DiFelice and Robin Brookes, were sexually assaulted and murdered just months apart. Then, in 1996, another woman, Jasmine Porter, met a similar fate. These three cases turned cold and remained unsolved for many years. So, how did these cases unfold? Let's find out. Hi, and welcome to Mysterious Hook, where we shed light on under-the-radar cases across the country. And today, we will be looking at three cases that went cold for decades but were finally solved in 2022. So, let's dive right into these mysteries without any further ado. Our first case will take us to the city of Las Vegas. Las Vegas is the most populous city in Nevada. What many don't know is that it was initially a small town founded in 1905. With time, it experienced a population explosion and rapid growth and development in various sectors. Today, the city is famous for its nightlife, casinos, and many points of interest, which attract tourists from all over the world. Sandra was originally from the capital city of Idaho, Boise. However, she eventually moved out of Boise with her childhood friend to Las Vegas. In Las Vegas, Sandra and her friend decided that it was best they stay together as roommates. The house they lived in was a short distance from a local park, as well as the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department's downtown command center. This proximity to a police station offered some comfort and a sense of security to the two friends. There was another inhabitant in the house occupied by Sandra and her friend. This was Sandra's 3-year-old daughter, who she had with her boyfriend. To make ends meet in the new city, Sandra took up a job as a waitress at a popular restaurant called Sambo's Restaurant. Life seemed to be moving at a good pace for the 25-year-old mother, but things would soon take a different and very dark turn. Sandra had no idea that her life would come to an abrupt end on December 26, 1980. Post-Christmas festivity was still in the air, and no one living within the East Las Vegas neighborhood where Sandra resided would have expected a tragedy to occur. Around 9 p.m. on December 26th, Sandra's boyfriend decided to pay her a visit. On arriving at the house, he noticed that it was unusually quiet. Not knowing what to expect, he went straight to Sandra's room and was shocked to his core by the sight that greeted him. Lying face up on the bed was Sandra. She was dead, and the walls were splattered with her blood. Her agitated boyfriend immediately sprung into action and called the police to report the incident. And in a matter of minutes, police officers from the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department arrived. They determined that Sandra had been sexually assaulted, stabbed, and strangled to death. Sandra's daughter, who had gone to stay with her grandparents at the time, had not been around to witness the terrible scene. Sandra's family was devastated when they were given the news of her death. Investigators immediately commenced an investigation. Sandra's roommate was questioned, and she revealed that she had seen Sandra alive barely 2 hours before her death. At the scene of the murder, investigators were able to collect several dark hairs. They had been found on Sandra's stomach and were believed to belong to her killer. Sandra herself was blonde, so the dark hairs stood out. In addition, investigators also got their hands on several other items of evidence, and one of these included a drinking glass containing Kool-Aid. Upon further analysis, a fingerprint was discovered on the drinking glass, and it was not long before a match was found. The fingerprint belonged to a man by the name of Paul Nuttall. He was immediately named as a person of interest. The investigation was moving quickly, and it seemed the authorities were making headway. However, they ended up being disappointed. Paul was brought in for questioning, but there was nothing tangible detectives could use to pin him to the murder. As it turned out, Paul was a close friend of Sandra's roommate. According to the roommate's explanation to the detectives, Paul had been at their residence the morning of the murder. She further explained that Paul had asked her to let him sleep in the house because he had nowhere else to go. She had declined, and her reason was that Sandra did not know him well. However, she later invited Paul in to wait for her while she got ready for work. She had told him they would leave together when she left the house. During this time, Paul helped himself to a glass of Kool-Aid. This perfectly explained why his fingerprint had been found on the drinking glass. The roommate also said that after she had gotten ready for work, she and Paul had then left the house. With this revelation, authorities had no choice but to let Paul go. He was deemed an innocent man. Authorities had no further leads after this, and as time went by, the case grew cold. Before we get on with the video, we'd like to thank Athena Interior for sponsoring us. And let me tell you, Athena Interior has a range of beautiful and aesthetic interior decor products that are made with premium quality materials. They have many products like candles, vases, and more that will definitely highlight your interiors. So do check them out today. Use code MYSTERIOUS to get 20% off. Link in the description. Buy now. It wasn't until February 2021 that the case would be reopened again. This reopening was prompted by a call from Sandra's daughter to the police department. She had asked for an update about her mother's death, and investigators decided it was high time the case was revisited. Upon a review of that investigation, in conjunction with our DNA forensics lab, they were able to determine that there was additional evidence that could be submitted for processing using new DNA technology, Lieutenant Jason Johansson, who had investigated the case, said. The additional evidence that was submitted for testing was DNA that was found under Sandra's fingernails. This DNA had never been tested, and it proved to be the clue detectives needed to crack the case. The DNA was a match to a man, and this was none other than Paul Nuttall. From the beginning, detectives had had their suspicions about him, but there was nothing they could do since the technology was limited at the time of Sandra's murder. And now, with the strong evidence, authorities knew they finally had him cornered. Paul was eventually arrested on October 27, 2022, at his home in Northwest Valley, Las Vegas. After Paul Nuttall was taken into custody, my cold case investigators had the pleasure of making the one phone call that every cold case detective wants to make, Lieutenant Jason said during a news conference after Paul's arrest. I am hopeful that in some way, shape, or form, this provides some sort of closure for the family, he added. Paul, who is currently 64 years of age, was slammed with charges including murder, sexual assault with the use of a deadly weapon, and burglary while in possession of a deadly weapon. A look at Paul's criminal history revealed that he had not been involved in any other violent crime. However, he had been arrested in the past for felony and drug possession. At the moment, it's still unclear what fate awaits him since his court case is still ongoing. There's also a concern that Paul might have impaired thinking and reasoning ability. Authorities believe that this might hinder him from understanding the charges against him. Due to this, he is being made to undergo a mental health evaluation. This next case will take us to the Bronx, a borough of New York that is often regarded as the birthplace of hip-hop music. It is also home to the famous Yankee Stadium and the largest urban zoo in the United States. On the flip side, the Bronx is plagued by gang-related violence. Jasmine grew up in Long Island, and according to her family, she was a very friendly individual who enjoyed having fun. She was a phenomenal singer, a professional singer, Jasmine's younger sister, Shauna Porter White, told the media. She was very outgoing, and she trusted a lot of people. Everyone was her friend. I told her everyone's not your friend, she added. By 1996, Jasmine Porter was 36 years old and a mother to a 4-year-old boy called Jeremy. She lived a peaceful life with her son in an apartment on Davidson Avenue in the Bronx. We never thought she would become a mom, Jasmine's brother, Derek Porter, said. She liked to have fun. She enjoyed life. When she did get pregnant and finally had the baby, she was a great mom. According to Derek, Jasmine was studying and had dreams of one day landing an administrative job with her degree. However, Jasmine would not live long enough to see that dream fulfilled. On February 5, 1996, authorities responded to a call from Jasmine's neighbors. They were concerned that they hadn't seen her or Jeremy for some days. When neighbors didn't see him go to school that Monday, they realized something was wrong and called the police, Derek said. When authorities arrived at Jasmine's apartment, they opened the door and found her dead in the front bedroom with Jeremy beside her. Jasmine had been dead for about 2 days when her body was found. All the while, her son had stayed beside her. It was a horrible scene to behold. He locked himself in the apartment with her, tried to clean her nose, wipe the blood off her nose, Derek recalled. You know, the bond between mother and son is huge. He didn't leave her side, he added. It was discovered that Jasmine had been sexually assaulted and then strangled to death. This was obvious from the severe trauma she suffered to the neck. Authorities declared her death to be a homicide. This was corroborated by Jeremy, who had watched his mother die in front of him. The son indicated there was a man sitting on top of his mother, and that the man was naked, said Detective Robert Klein, a homicide investigator that had worked on the case. He stated that he tried to help her, but the killer was too heavy, and that the man yelled at him to get away. Derek also spoke about what Jeremy had told him after his mother was killed. I picked him up, and he talked to me. The person actually was going to strangle him, and he didn't. Also, at the time of Jasmine's death, she had been 6 months pregnant. Her death was a tragic loss to her family and friends, and authorities made it a priority to hunt down her killer. But after several weeks of interviewing people, the investigators found nothing. They were not closer to solving the case, and it was frustrating. The case went cold, and it seemed Jasmine's killer had gotten away with the crime for good. In early 2021, Detective Robert overheard a robbery suspect speaking about Jasmine's murder. This had been during a jailhouse call. It's unclear what the suspect had said precisely, but it was enough to spur Robert into reopening the cold case. But in the interim, I got a hold of the case file, Detective Robert said. I started tracking down people interviewed back in '96, and I also got a hold of the forensic biology report. It soon came to the detective's attention that scrapings taken from underneath Jasmine's finger had never been tested. This was because the technology to carry out such tests had not been available at the time of the murder. Detective Robert soon submitted the scrapings for analysis and patiently waited for the result. I knew there was a high probability that there would be the suspect's DNA under those nails, Detective Robert said. First step was to obviously find that evidence, which can sometimes be tricky. But in my efforts to reach out to the office of the chief medical examiner and the people over there, they actually were able to find it. It took a while, but they found it. The DNA evidence led authorities to a man named Gregory Fleetwood. Gregory was a man with a criminal record. He had been convicted of strangling a woman to death back in 1987, and just like Jasmine, the woman had also been pregnant. For the crime, Gregory was found guilty and imprisoned. However, he served only 7 years in prison and was released in August 1994. The reason for his early release was that the murder charge had been reduced to a lighter charge of manslaughter. It was a shock that he murdered Jasmine barely 2 years after his release. Gregory's DNA was also linked to many other violent crimes of sexual assault, which took place over the years. One of these had taken place a month after Jasmine's murder, and as a matter of fact, it was right next door to where Jasmine lived. Gregory was soon arrested at his apartment in the Williamsbridge section of the Bronx and was charged with murder. After Gregory was taken into custody, he maintained his innocence by insisting that he had never met Jasmine before and had no hand in her death. He basically denied ever having known the victim, ever having interacted with her, and said that if for some reason his DNA was on her, that's a mistake that we made, Detective Robert said. The detective soon shared news of the arrest with Jasmine's family. When I called Miss Porter White and informed her, it was very emotional for her, Detective Robert said. When we got the call, it was amazing that she wasn't forgotten. It's good work. The police department doesn't always get their dues," Derek said. Derek also spoke highly of Detective Robert, praising him for his role in the case. "That detective, I have tears in my eyes when I think of Detective Klein. What he did for our family, he treated Jasmine like she was his own sister." Sadly, Jasmine's mother and younger brother, Jason, had passed away by this time and were not around to witness the breakthrough in the case. "I can't think of anything that's more gratifying than taking a case that's sort of lying dormant for so long. Justice is at least on its way to being served. It's sort of the pinnacle of my police career," Detective Robert said. As for Gregory, who is now 66 years old, he could face 25 years to life imprisonment if found guilty of Jasmine's murder. In 1980, 20-year-old Robin Brookes lived in an apartment on Tallyho Drive in the beautiful city of Sacramento. Sacramento is a city with a rich history. It has so many nicknames, including the City of Trees. Following the discovery of gold in the area back in the 18th century, gold seekers came in large numbers to mine the precious metal. At present, Sacramento is famous for its extensive and vibrant agriculture. Robin was born in Fort Lee, Virginia, but lived most of her life in Highland, New York. She was carefree, fun-loving, and well-loved by her family. She didn't have fear, not like I had. Maria Eric, Robin's elder sister, had said. It was more anxious, a little more careful. When Robin was around the age of 19, she decided to move to Sacramento with Maria. She had always longed to experience something new, and moving to Sacramento seemed perfect. In the new city, the two sisters settled in quite nicely. At the time, Maria was romantically involved with a man named Norbert Holston. Norbert was known for his anger issues, and this ugly side of him put a strain on his relationship with Maria. It also affected his relationship with Robin, which contributed to why the two sisters chose to live separately. However, Maria wasn't comfortable with her sister living alone. She worried for her safety. But when she made her concerns known to Robin, it only led to an argument. I was the older sister, and I always felt like I was her protector. When she came out here, she was just having fun. She was 20, Maria said. Robin worked at a donut shop off Kiefer Boulevard, a few blocks from where she lived. Since she had no car, it became routine for her to walk all the way to work and back to her apartment at the end of her shift. Life in Sacramento seemed good, and Robin was enjoying every moment of it, but it wouldn't be for long. On April 24th, 1980, she worked late until around midnight. There was nothing unusual about this since her shift ended around that time. Robin couldn't wait to leave work and go home. Joan Olson, a co-worker at the donut shop, had later said, she was joking about having to go home and make her bed before she could crawl into it. She had stripped the bed and done the laundry before she came to work, and she was joking about how it wasn't fair to have to make a bed at bedtime, Joan had added. As soon as Robin left for work, she made her way to her apartment. That would be the last time she was seen alive by anyone. Robin had a swim date planned with a couple of friends the next day. However, she did not show up for it. Her absence did not go unnoticed. Her shift at the donut shop was slated to begin at 4 p.m., but Robin did not turn up for work. This was quite strange, and her absence worried her coworkers. When she didn't show up, some of them walked over to her apartment to find out what was wrong. On getting there, they discovered that Robin's door was locked. They banged on the door several times and called her name, but got no response. Several worrying thoughts began to race through their minds. Had she left town without informing anybody? Was she asleep inside the house? They knew they had to find their way into the apartment to really know if she was inside or not. With the help of the house manager, they soon forced the front door open and stepped into a very silent house. Fearing the worst, they proceeded to the bedroom, and what they saw was too much to take in. Robin Brookes' lifeless body was right in the middle of a punctured waterbed. She had been bound and stabbed to death. It was an unsettling sight. Robin's co-workers wasted no time in letting the police know what had happened. And in a matter of minutes, detectives from the Sacramento Sheriff's Department arrived on the scene. An autopsy revealed that Robin had been sexually assaulted before she was stabbed 5 times. One of the knife blows had pierced her heart. Her killer's DNA was also found in her body. In addition to this, blood was found smeared on the wall of her apartment that was not Robin's. This made authorities infer that the killer had accidentally cut himself while assaulting Robin. Fingerprints belonging to an unidentified individual believed to be the killer were also found on the windowsill of Robin's apartment. This made detectives infer that whoever killed Robin had gotten in through the window. At the time, it seemed this evidence would be enough to quickly bring the killer to justice, but that was not the case. Authorities were handicapped by one major challenge. The technology available was not efficient enough to aid them in their investigative work. Due to this, several months and years went by without any progress being made in the case. Robin's killer continued to remain at large. Maria was hit hard by her sister's death. For a long time, she blamed herself for not being there for Robin. She was constantly depressed, and over time, she found solace in alcohol. This habit made her spiral downward, and a long battle with alcohol addiction began. In 2004, almost 24 years after Robin's brutal murder, a big break was made in the case. With advanced forensic technology, investigators were able to create a DNA profile of the killer from his blood. This new development gave investigators something more tangible to work with, and they hoped the killer would be caught in time. Several individuals believed to be the suspect's possible relatives were tested, but this yielded no result. Investigators were left even more frustrated than before. Detective Mickey Lynx, who had come out of retirement to dedicate her time to the case, had said in an interview, "It's very frustrating because we have our suspect. We have his DNA, and it's a full profile. We know who he is. We just need his name. We need to find who he is." In 2017, the case took an interesting turn. Investigators were able to get an idea of what the killer possibly looked like. This was made possible by a forensic method called DNA phenotyping. The method involves predicting the physical appearance of an unknown individual by using DNA extracted from semen, blood, or other bodily fluid. Physical features such as hair color, height, skin color, and a whole lot more can be determined using this process. In Robin's killer's case, authorities were able to create 2 composite sketches. One was of what he would look like at age 25, and the other was of what he would look like at age 56. These 2 profiles were released to the public with the hopes that someone would recognize the killer and come forward with vital information. But authorities were disappointed. Nothing came out of it. The only information authorities got was from an unnamed individual. This information was a different account of what they had initially believed happened on the day of Robin's murder. According to the informant, Robin had not gone home after leaving work. "We believe she was at a party that same evening with Hiram Johnson High School students," Sergeant Paul Belly, who worked on this case, said. This party had taken place at Roseport Way, and after the party, Robin had left for home. While all these revelations were coming to light and the investigation was ongoing, Maria had also gotten her life together. She overcame her alcohol addiction and decided that it was best she lived a life that honored her sister's memory. In 2020, investigators used a DNA search technique called genetic genealogy that helped them get closer to the truth. Genetic genealogy can be used to explore family trees by cross-referencing the DNA profile of an unknown person with that of other people in a public database. This method is very efficient and has been used to bring many elusive criminals to justice. With this method, investigators were able to connect the dots and find Robin's killer. A lab criminalist called Lynx's office line to inform her about the significant discovery, but Lynx couldn't be reached. When Lynx finally called back, the words she was told were, "You found your guy." I literally hung up the phone, and I jumped up and down, and I was clapping my hands, and I ran around the office to tell everybody, Lynx said. She informed Maria, who was also overjoyed by the news. "I was always so afraid he wouldn't be alive." What's a miracle is that DNA. It gives a lot of hope for other people. I never gave up. Maria said. The individual investigators discovered to be Robin's killer was a man by the name of Philip Lee Wilson. Wilson had continued living in Sacramento since the murder. He had been right under the nose of the authorities all the while, but they had no idea. On April 23, 2020, Wilson was arrested at the age of 71 in connection with the 40-year-old murder. He was held without bail and charged with 1 count of murder. Wilson maintained his innocence, and the case went to trial. The trial took place nearly 2 years after his arrest. Prosecutors presented evidence that Wilson's DNA was a perfect match to the blood smeared on Robin's apartment wall back in 1980. The fingerprints found on the apartment's windowsill also matched his. According to prosecutors, Wilson snuck into her apartment through a window while she was sleeping. He bound her, sexually assaulted her, and killed her with a knife. Wilson's attorney, Thomas Klinkenbeard, did not dispute that the DNA was Wilson's. However, he argued that Wilson and Robin had known each other and they had had consensual intercourse on the day of the murder. Klinkenbeard also gave a reason as to why Wilson's blood had been found in Robin's apartment. The reason he gave was that Wilson had suffered a workplace injury. In addition to all this, Klinkenbeard then blamed Robin's murder on Maria's ex-boyfriend, Norbert. He described Norbert as a volatile and hot-tempered man who Maria had been afraid of. He made it known to the court that in the days leading to Robin's murder, both Norbert and Maria had gotten into an argument, and the situation had escalated, with Norbert threatening to kill both Maria and Robin. Klinkenbeard believed that Norbert had lived up to his threat by killing Robin. Well, Maria's testimony rendered this claim invalid. She told the court that Norbert had been with her the night of the murder. Norbert himself was not available to give testimony in court because he had died many years ago. After the trial, which lasted 10 days, the case was reviewed by the jury. On March 9, 2022, which was Wilson's 73rd birthday, they reached a verdict that he was guilty of the murder charge. This decision was made after the jury had initially failed to reach an agreement. More than a month after Wilson was convicted, he was sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. Maria was relieved and elated by the news. It was much needed closure after many years. I feel like I can go on with my life now. I think the case absorbed a piece of who I was, Maria said. Lynx was also one of the people happy with the outcome of the case. There is justice in the world, and he will spend all his birthdays now in prison, Lynx had said. I wish we found him earlier, but finally, justice has been done, she added. Sexual violence is a major societal and health problem that continues to be on the increase globally. The lives of many men and women have been drastically affected and scarred by one ugly encounter or the other. Some don't even live to tell the tale, just like the 3 victims of today's video. What are your views on sexual violence? Do you think additional measures should be implemented to reduce or eliminate this problem? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. And don't forget to like, share, and hit the subscribe button. For now, stay safe and keep watching Mysterious 7 for more mysterious content.